A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you, well, not a book review or a graphic novel review, but a comparison today. So, cheers for this one. Now, I have been a fan of Spider-Man for many years as a little kid. And then we got the animated series, which was fucking balls to the wall awesome. We got the movies with Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland. The Spider-Verse movies that introduced Miles Morales, like Spider-Man is basically one of the most iconic characters out there, up there with Batman for his villain repertoire. And one of the original villains, but certainly not the most famous, is of course Kraven the Hunter. Kraven appearing first in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 15 from 1960, I want to say 64, but comment down below if I'm wrong. I really don't know. It was in the mid-60s. Created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. And just a fantastic villain, Sergei Kravenov, a Russian kind of oligarch type of character who was forced to come to America because his parents lost all of their wealth. He, uses potions and shit to elongate his life and up his strength and whatnot. There's a movie coming out, Kraven the Hunter, by Sony that I don't give a shit what you fucking say about these Sony movies that focus on Spider-Man villains like Venom and Carnage and whatnot. I fucking love them. I think they're great fun. And if you're a fanboy that's like, oh, they fucked up the fucking shit, and blah, 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 hey, all the power to you. You've got your fucking right to an opinion on whether or not they're good or bad and you like them or you don't like them. I'm just saying they're fun for me. And I'm looking forward to Kraven the Hunter. I think it's great. Which leads me into today's video, which is a story, a Spider-Man story that I've wanted to fucking read for the longest time, but I could never get my hands on it. Until recently, I managed to pick up the Epic Collection. Fucking hell, I can't even speak English today. The Epic Collection that features Kraven's Last Hunt. Now, I actually read and reviewed the first series of these stories up until the shitty-ass wedding of Mary Jane and Peter Parker, one of the most boring fucking comics I've ever read, but whatever. But today I am only going to review the last 6 issues of this collection because it is Kraven's Last Hunt, starting in Web of Spider-Man number 31, I believe. The reason I am reviewing this is because I wanted to compare it to the novelization of Kraven's Last Hunt. Now, Marvel has been doing these novelizations of comic book story arcs. I've read and reviewed Days of Future Past. I've read and reviewed the Dark Phoenix saga, and this is the 3rd one. I do have a lot more. I've got X-Men and Avengers. I've got X-Men Mutant Genesis. I've got one about the Dark Avengers. I've got a Spider-Man omnibus. I've got a Wolverine omnibus. I really enjoy these novelizations of comic books. I think they're a lot of fun to read if you're a fan. And I don't know, they just trigger something inside of me. It's nostalgia, I guess. So this is going to be a comparison of the novelization and the comic book. I'm going to start by going through the comic book itself. Pardon me. I think it's important that you get an understanding of the story of Kraven's Last Hunt. And then I'll talk about the novel at the end of the video and which one I preferred. But if you don't want to watch it, if you don't want any of the spoilers, I love them both. The comic collection is superior just for the story and the art. I think the novelization goes a little too much into the psychology of the characters, which can kind of bog the story down a bit. But I'm just going to get, right into the next episode of...
Read a fucking book. 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 People.
So I've already looked at a majority of this epic collection, but this will be looking at the 6-issue story arc, Kraven's Last Hunt. So, cheers to everyone who is tuning in. So this is the story that comes kind of after the wedding issue. The really boring wedding issue. Starting with Web of Spider-Man number 31. A fantastic cover, by the way. So we start with Kraven the Hunter here. And he's just basically talking about the fact that Spider-Man has beaten him, and he's going around kind of taking out all of his trophies, the panther, the ape, and whatnot. And then we get this chilling kind of panel where some guy's digging a grave in the rain. And Kraven goes through his mansion, his townhouse, and he comes to a coffin in this almost like a chapel. And we see in the coffin is Spider-Man's black suit costume. This is, of course, the symbiote Spider-Man costume that he got from the original Secret Wars, which, of course, turns out to be Venom. But that doesn't really play a part in this story. Now we come to this bar where this low-level gangster called Joe Face has been killed. And the narration we get is from Peter Parker, who says that he shouldn't care that Joe Face has been killed, but he still does. The people at the bar, like the bartender and the people that gathered around, are other low-level mobsters who admit that they were his only family. He, like Joe Face, had no family. He had no one to raise money for him. So they all kind of put something in to the pot to get him a burial plot. Spider-Man, of course, crashes the party, not because he's there to arrest anyone, but because he knew Joe Face, and Joe Face was an informant of his sometimes, that he sometimes arrested, and he kind of feels bad. Now, this is right after Ned Leeds has been killed. Ned Leeds being the Hobgoblin, of course. So Spider-Man kind of is feeling guilty about that and wondering why all the people around him seemingly pass away. One of the gangsters is going to shoot Spider-Man, but the bartender is like, don't fucking do it. Spider-Man puts some money in the pot as this guy is digging a grave. We go back to Kraven after Spider-Man kind of falls asleep. Kraven the Hunter covers himself in spiders. He's really kind of trying to get into this mentality. Spider-Man wakes up from a nightmare and decides to go out on a kind of a routine surveil of the city. Kraven does the same thing, but his goal is to capture Spider-Man. Now, you can tell the art in this is fucking phenomenal. I believe the art was done by an artist called, let me just find, Mike Zeck, and J.M. DeMatteis wrote the story. Just phenomenal stuff. So Kraven is lowered down by a helicopter while Spider-Man kind of is doing his thing. Kraven manages to get a dart into Spider-Man's neck. Spider-Man starts to kind of lose control a little bit. Some drug has started to mess with his senses. But he realized that it's Kraven. He confronts him, but Kraven kind of knocks him down and traps him in this net. And Spider-Man tries to quip his way out of this with his kind of usual one-liners, but he realizes that Kraven is fucking insane at this point. And Kraven's got a rifle pointed at him. And Spider-Man's like, oh shit. And then Kraven shoots him. And everything goes dark. And then we just see Spider-Man in a coffin with Kraven and some men around him. And Kraven just laughs. As Spider-Man is buried, Kraven wins. Spider-Man is buried in a grave 6 feet under, in a coffin, covered in dirt. That is the end of the issue, which leads us to part 2 in Amazing Spider-Man 293. We see a rat on the grave. We see Spider-Man's tombstone. Here lies Spider-Man slain by the Hunter. Rain is pouring down. There's lightning. Now, this rat on the grave is a really, really good foreshadowing of what is to come. We see Spider-Man standing over the grave, but when he removes his mask, it is in fact Kraven the Hunter, who has become Spider-Man to best him, to prove that he is superior to Spider-Man in every way. We get this woman running through the streets. She sees a rat, trips and hits her head, and as she's trying to get up, she is dragged down into the sewers. And we again see the rat on Spider-Man's grave. She wakes up in the sewers, doesn't know where she is, but she's confronted by this villain, Vermin. Now, Vermin is interesting in as much as if this is your first time reading a Spider-Man comic and you're confronted with this villain, you don't know shit about him. But there is a history with Vermin and Spider-Man. And Spider-Man actually needed Captain America's help to defeat Vermin the first time they met. Vermin is a very interesting character, but you don't get a lot of that in the comic. You do get a lot of that in the novel, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. Mary Jane is wondering where her husband is because at this point, Peter and Mary Jane are married. She sees a rat in the apartment and then just beats the fucking thing to death. And then we have the rat still on the grave. Kraven gets back to his townhouse, crawling around like a spider. A lot of these Kraven's Last Hunt issues are inner dialogue. Kraven talking to himself. Vermin talking to himself. Peter Parker, before he died, talking to himself. So Kraven kind of goes into a room with spiders. He's drinking this kind of potion, trying to kind of free this beast. Now, Kraven in this, we get a little bit of backstory about how his father and mother were forced out of Russia and forced to come to America where they lived in poverty. His mother went mad and was confined to an asylum. His father hit the bottle pretty hard, and Kraven kind of tries to regain his family's honor. That's why he's doing all of this. And he hallucinates this giant spider made out of little spiders. We can see Vermin has killed the woman and is sharing her with his rat friends, and he decides to go up into the city out of the sewers. But when a spider appears on the sewer grate, he's like, no, fuck that shit. I'm not going down there. He's terrified of Spider-Man because Spider-Man put the hurt on him with Captain America in their last meeting. Mary Jane is wandering the streets trying to find her husband. Two jocks who are for some reason in shorts in the rain. Really weird artistic choice, but okay. Make a move on her and she tells them to fuck off. Kraven is kind of going a bit apeshit with his hallucinations, and Vermin is trying to get up the bravery to go topside, which he manages to get. The guys follow Mary Jane and chase her down and grab her, but she's saved by Spider-Man. Now, she's been looking for Peter Parker. She knows at this point that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. She's been looking for him for a week, give or take, and Spider-Man appears, but then he brutalizes these fucking guys. Like, he lays the smackdown on them like Spider-Man never fucking would. And Mary Jane realizes this isn't Peter Parker, this isn't Spider-Man. And Spider-Man crawls up the wall, and Mary Jane's like, that's not him. Vermin, who kind of witnesses this, kind of slinks away into the shadows, and then we get to part 3. We see Kraven busting in on some weapons dealers or drug dealers, and he puts the fucking hurt on them and ends up killing a couple of them. And reveling in it, the cops kind of know this couldn't be Spidey because Spidey doesn't kill. Another woman is walking through the streets and Vermin drags her into an alley, and as he does so, some cops come and he basically summons the rats to attack one of the cops, while the cop's partner gives him the fucking skinny, like, leave this fucking shit alone, get your rats off. And Vermin kind of goes back and slinks back into the underworld. Mary Jane goes to Robbie, who is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle, but can't bring herself to talk about Peter or Spider-Man, and then just leaves. This is a completely superfluous couple of pages that did not have to be in the book itself, but hey, whatever. Kraven is doing his thing. He's torturing a rat. Now, there is a purpose, there is a method to his madness here. He's torturing the rat because he knows that the only villain Spider-Man hasn't beaten by himself is Vermin, because Spider-Man needed Captain America's help. So his mentality is, if he can beat Vermin alone, he's better than Spider-Man. He's the superior Spider-Man. Vermin can kind of sense the rat's in danger, and as Kraven goes out, Vermin and hunts Vermin, Vermin kind of gets an understanding. Kraven, as Spider-Man, comes down and just puts the fucking smackdown on Vermin. It is a brutal fight, just punching the shit out of him. The rats are biting Spider-Man. Spider-Man's attacking Vermin, and he ends up besting him. He climbs out of the sewer with Vermin. This homeless guy sees him and is like, I don't want anything to do with that. And then we move into part 4, where we see Peter Parker in limbo. He sees Ned Leeds, the Hobgoblin, who died. If you watch the earlier video of this collection, you know that Ned Leeds was the Hobgoblin, but he was killed in Germany. And Peter refuses to acknowledge that he's alive, so he starts to melt. And Peter's just hallucinating at this point. Trying to dig his way out of this spider cocoon grave thing with Kraven taunting him and whatnot. And then Peter finally digs his way kind of out of the grave and makes his way to Kraven's townhouse, where he discovers that he's been in that grave for 2 weeks, and Kraven had stolen 2 weeks of his life. And he goes berserk. He basically smashes the place up. Kraven's lackeys see him there, and they're like, should we do something? No, let's not do anything. He's kind of broken. We'll just call Kraven. And Kraven's happy. Peter Parker realizes that he wasn't shot with a gun, but with kind of drugs that slowed his heart rate down to put him basically in a 2-week coma. Kraven's happy that he has escaped. We see Vermin is now trapped in a cage that is electrified. Mary Jane is at her wit's end until Peter Parker returns to her, and they have their little reunion. Peter wakes up. He's only been asleep for a couple of hours at this point, and Mary Jane's in the bathroom. Peter realizes he's got to go stop Kraven. Mary Jane's like, hey, fuck no, we're married. You're not doing that. And Peter's like, yes, I am. And then he goes off to confront Kraven the Hunter, which he does. He finds Kraven in his townhouse, dressed as him in the Black Spider costume. And that leads us into issue 5, where Vermin is still kind of trapped in this electrified cage. Now, Vermin in the comic is not really given a lot of interesting character development. In the novel, which I will talk about in a moment, you do get that development, which is very, very interesting. So Spider-Man, pissed off that Kraven stole 2 weeks of his life, just beats the ever-loving shit out of him, and Kraven does not fight back. And he's like, there's no point. I beat you. I won. And then he takes the spider costume off and goes into his Kraven the Hunter kind of costume and asks Spider-Man to follow him down to the basement, where we can see Vermin trapped in a cage and some other trophies that Kraven the Hunter has won. Kraven is torturing Vermin. He tortures him with fire. Spider-Man uses his webs to put it out and kind of take it away. And then Kraven just goes fucking berserk, like, I beat you, I'm the champion, blah, blah, blah. And then Spider-Man says, shut the fuck up, what are you doing? And Kraven releases Vermin and goads Vermin into fighting Spider-Man, which doesn't go well. Vermin believes that Spider-Man was the one that trapped him because Kraven, when he defeated Vermin, was dressed as Spider-Man. So Spider-Man tries to convince Vermin that it was Kraven all along, but Vermin isn't having any of it. Vermin and Spider-Man continue to fight. Spider-Man basically beats the shit out of him again, and Kraven lets Vermin go after Vermin turns the tables on Spider-Man, and Kraven's like, no, you're free now. Just get the fuck out of here. And Kraven leads Spider-Man upstairs. Spider-Man is like, how can you let him go? He's a cannibal. He's going to kill again. I've got to go stop him. And Kraven's like, that's the point. But here is the kicker. Kraven, now believing that he has bested Spider-Man in defeating the one foe that Spider-Man needed help to defeat. He defeated Spider-Man and buried him alive and whatnot. He has regained his family's honor. He has promised Spider-Man he will no longer hunt. There is nothing else left for him. So Kraven takes a rifle out of the coffin, puts the barrel in his mouth, and pulls the trigger, thus becoming Kraven's last hunt. Having achieved what he wanted to achieve, there is nothing left for him, so he ends it. Brutal. We still have the conclusion. Part 6. Spider-Man in the sewer, chasing after Vermin. You can see he's hallucinating that he's in the coffin. the rats kind of attack him, and he gets the upper hand. Someone's digging another grave. The cops have found Kraven's confession, so that exonerates Spider-Man of all the death and the killing and whatnot. Spider-Man and the Vermin fight brutally in the sewers, which is just, it's phenomenal art in this. You can just see it's so dynamic. The fight continues. Spider-Man is trying to convince Vermin that he doesn't want to hurt him, but Vermin's not having any of it. And ultimately, Spider-Man flees and goes up into the streets. Vermin follows him, but it's daylight and Vermin is blinded by the light and whatnot. Spider-Man manages to capture him, saving him before he's hit by a truck, and he gives him to the police and realizes that he's been exonerated. He goes back to Mary Jane, and at the end of the comic, we see the burial of Kraven. That is the second grave that this guy was digging, and Kraven is put to rest. Now, spoiler alert, he does come back in, I believe the story is called Grim Hunt, which is a really cool story, and I like the way they brought him back. But this is the end of Kraven's Last Hunt, the comic. Now, I never read this growing up, and I've been looking for this for so many years. I'm so happy to have found it and actually read it. But the Epic Collection has some extra stuff, of course, mainly due to the wedding of Spidey and Mary Jane. And we get some funny kind of comics here. The dress, the Marvel Saga. It's a whole big thing. You know how I feel about the wedding issue. It was shit, but you know what? That was Kraven's Last Hunt, the actual story. I reviewed the Epic Collection earlier, so go and look at that. But how does it compare to the novel, Kraven's Last Hunt? Because that is the purpose of this video. Now, the novel does a really good job of capturing the story itself. It really does. The downside to the novel is there is too much inner dialogue. So you're getting, the perspective of Peter Parker's inner dialogue, Kraven's inner dialogue, Mary Jane's inner dialogue, Vermin's inner dialogue, and it bogs the story down a whole hell of a lot. Now, a few of the differences here. In the comic book, Vermin was created by Baron Zemo, who is a Captain America or Avengers villain. In the novel, Vermin was created by Oscorp. He was a researcher at Oscorp, didn't like what Norman Osborn was doing, confronted him, and Norman Osborn experimented on him, turned him into the Vermin. And the reason that he became a rat was because the experiments kind of brought out the inner animal, and Edward, who is the alter ego of Vermin, was a coward at heart. He was a rat, he was a rodent, so they turned him into Vermin. I'm not sure if the black suit is the symbiote suit from Secret Wars. That's something that I haven't looked into. At the end of the novel, you get this whole confession by Vermin, because in the comic book, Spider-Man wants Vermin to get some help, and he seeks the help of Reed Richards, who is Mr. Fantastic. In the novel, he takes Vermin to the police, and the police kind of apologize for believing Spider-Man killed people, and they get him help, and it's a psychiatrist who wants Vermin to talk about what happened and what he did, and we find out that Vermin felt guilty about the experiments that Norman Osborn did, but never stood up for himself. So there was that whole thing here. In the comic book, Mary Jane and Peter Parker are married, whereas in the novel, it's just after Peter gets back from Berlin and he tells his secret to Mary Jane, and they are boyfriend and girlfriend. So they're not married in the novel, which is fine. Ultimately, though, the novel did a fantastic job of capturing the spirit of the 6-issue kind of miniseries. However, I felt the novel was a little slow. And that's mainly because of the internal dialogue, these inner monologues that these characters are having that kind of drag the book out a bit. Which do I think is better? Go for the comic. The comic is freaking amazing. The art is great and the writing is great. But I'm not going to dismiss this because I really enjoyed it. I mean, these Marvel Universe novels are really, really cool if you've got the time and the inclination to read them. So they're both great, but I did enjoy the comic book a little bit more than the novelization of it. If you can, though, try and read both and make up your own minds, because I think they each have their own merits. I think Neil Clede's version of Kraven the Hunter, or Kraven's Last Hunt, I should say, mirrors the comic book version a great deal, and that is a testament to his writing style and to the fact that he can grasp the content matter of the comic. But as you saw, the comic is just fucking fantastic, and I highly, highly recommend it. So that is my comparison of Kraven's Last Hunt, the 6-issue miniseries, versus the novelization. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification button so you don't miss any videos that we produce here at Plaguelands Media. But most importantly, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors, tell your mailman, tell the person at the supermarket who's standing behind you waiting for you to pay, but you're just using coins to pay because you're that fucking annoying person. Just tell everyone. Plaguelands Media on YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, thank you very much. Leave a comment in the section down below. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, follow us on TikTok, where you're going to see some fantastic art by Ian Van Gammett. But stay safe, have a fantastic rest of your day, and most importantly, read some fucking books, people.